Here, we delve into tales of love, heartache, and life's unexpected journeys. Your subscription is invaluable in supporting our work, and we eagerly anticipate sharing more enthralling chronicles with you. I'm 47 years old, and my wife, Kathy, is 43. We've been married for 9 years, and not too long ago, I felt like I had it all. I had a job I loved, a comfortable home, and a wife who was my everything. Kathy and I were inseparable ever since high school. Every memory I held dear had her in it. Her infectious laugh, her sharp wit, and her unwavering support. She was my rock, my confidant, my best friend. But then our world started to crumble, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. One evening, as I walked through our front door late from work, Kathy's voice cut through the air like frost. "Jerry, you're late again." This wasn't the Kathy I knew. The woman who'd usually say better late than never was changing, and it scared me. I offered an apologetic smile, explaining that it was work and how it always seemed to be the excuse. But she left me standing there, the silence between a second wing loudly. For the next few days, I felt like I was walking on eggshells, desperately trying to figure out what was wrong. The Kathy I knew seemed lost, replaced by this cold stranger. I tried everything I could to reach out to work picnics at our favorite park, cooking her favorite lasagna, surprising her with daisies. But it was as if she didn't care anymore, as if she had checked out of our relationship. I didn't understand what was happening, not yet. Submission crept in, poisoning everything around me. My once perfect world was no longer perfect, and it was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. As days turned into weeks, I noticed even more changes. Late nights at work became a regular occurrence, sudden weekend plans without me. And worst of all, Kathy wasn't communicating like she used to. Was it me? Or was Kathy trying to avoid me? This wasn't the woman I had married. The sinking feeling in my stomach grew with each passing day, and I couldn't put my finger on what was wrong. Kathy began spending more time away from home, coming back late at night, something she had never done before. The sweet bliss of ignorance was wearing off, and I was left in a sea of uncertainty, desperately trying to make sense of it all. The threads of doubt in my mind were multiplying rapidly. Kathy always had a ready excuse for her late night. She was with Lana from work. There was a late meeting or some other plausible reason. But my suspicion was growing, fueled by every late night and unexplained absence. One evening, my worry got the best of me. It was past midnight, and Kathy hadn't returned. She had texted me hours ago, saying she was working late. A chilling thought entered my mind, and against my better judgment, I dialed Lana's number. We had met a few times, and she seemed nice enough. "Jerry," Lana's voice broke the silence of the night. "Kathy left at 5. She said she had plans." My heart sank as I muttered a quick thanks and ended the call. If she wasn't at work, where was Kathy? When Kathy finally got home late, we had a heated discussion and went to bed angry at each other. But the next morning, while she was in the shower, I saw a crumpled receipt poking out from her coat pocket. My hand shook as I unfolded the slip of paper. It was from an upscale restaurant downtown, a place we had talked about, but never visited due to the hefty prices. 2 main courses, 2 desserts, a bottle of wine. It was clear this was not a solitary dinner. She had been on a date, and it wasn't with me. Confronting Kathy didn't seem like the best idea at that moment. I needed more evidence, more than just a receipt and Lana's word. I tucked the receipt back into her coat and went about the day as if nothing had happened. Inside, however, I was a wreck. The woman I loved, the woman I had married, was slipping away from me into the arms of another man. My once blissful life was now colored with doubt and suspicion. As days turned into nights, weeks into months, I found myself in a horrible situation. The crumbling of our relationship seemed inevitable, and I didn't know if I had the strength to help mend it back together. The uncertainty and pain were tearing me apart, and I felt lost in a world that had once been so familiar and secure. My days went by in a blur filled with hollow conversations that were mere shadows of what we once shared. I kept my discovery of the dinner receipt a secret, quietly observing Kathy's actions and her growing distance. The truth was a bitter pill to swallow, and denial became my only refuge until I could deny it no longer. One morning, I finally mustered the courage to broach the subject. "Kathy, I found a receipt in your pocket from the restaurant," I said, my voice trembling with anxiety. Horizon, for a brief moment, before she regained her composure. "Oh, that," she replied nonchalantly. "It was a business dinner, Jerry." I desperately wanted to believe her, hoping her words could erase my doubts and take us back to our happier times. But her slight hesitation told a different story. Despite my best efforts, I couldn't shake off my suspicions. Nights turned into a torment of tossing and turning, haunted by the thought of Kathy laughing and dining with another man. I wrestled with my thoughts, torn between confronting her with my growing suspicions and desperately clinging to the fragments of our once blissful marriage. Weeks went by, each day a painful reminder of the growing chasm between us. My heart ached for the woman I had fallen in love with, but all I saw was a stranger wearing Kathy's face. The trust that had once been the foundation of our relationship had been shattered. Each passing day brought new doubts and fears, each one more crippling than the last. I was living with a stranger, a painful ghost of the woman I had loved with all my heart. I knew what I had to do. No more playing the fool. No more waiting for it to fall into my lap. It was time to seek out the truth myself, regardless of how painful it might be. I turned to my computer and started scouring for evidence, a cold determination fueling me. I delved into Kathy's online presence, scanning our social media profiles, her frequent contacts, anything that could give me a clue about who she was spending her time with late into the night. While I slept oblivious to my turmoil. As I scrolled through Kathy's online presence, my heart sank when I stumbled upon a picture of her at a party looking radiant in a little black dress. What caught my attention was the man next to her, Mark, her boss, with his arm casually slung around her waist. A chill ran down my spine. Could he be the one? My heart started pounding as I clicked on his profile. His pictures were filled with fancy dinners, luxury vacations, and beautiful women, and among them was Kathy, looking more vibrant and happier than she had in months. Seeing them together, laughing and enjoying each other's company was heartbreaking. The reality of Kathy's betrayal was taking shape before my eyes. The evidence was piling up and the truth was becoming impossible to ignore. Kathy was having an affair, and the man responsible was none other than her charming, charismatic boss. The initial shock gave way to a burning resolve to confront Kathy and expose the scandalous affair for what it was. My love for Kathy had been real, deep, and absolute, but her betrayal was a harsh reality I could no longer ignore. I stared at the man who had caused a rift in my marriage, a storm in my life. Mark was the reason behind my sleepless night, my unending worries, and my crumbling world, and he was about to find out that I wasn't someone to be trifled with. Kathy's affair was a wound that cut deep, but I refused to let it bleed me out. I had the truth on my side, and I was determined to expose it. But how? I began thinking about my options. Confronting Kathy immediately was one approach, but she might deny it or play the victim. I needed a solid plan, one that would force Kathy and Mark to face their transgressions with undeniable clarity. For that, I needed an ally, someone trustworthy who could help me see this through. Tina, my best friend and confidant, was the first person who came to mind. She was someone who had seen Kathy and me through our best and worst times. If there was anyone who could understand my predicament, it was her. The next day, I called Tina and explained everything. The late-night dinners, the social media pictures, Kathy's lies. To say she was shocked would be an understatement, but amidst her shock and disbelief, Tina offered her unwavering support. "We need evidence, Jerry," she said firmly, "hard, undeniable evidence." And so we began planning. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. We decided to hire a private to track Kathy's movements, gather pictures, document dates, and provide irrefutable proof of her infidelity. The thought of spying on my wife made me feel a little guilty, but the need for justice was stronger. This wasn't just about my broken heart. It was about exposing the truth. Days turned into nights as we received report after report from the investigator, piecing together evidence and plotting our next move. The process was emotionally draining, but the hope of exposing Kathy's scandalous affair kept me going. A plan was taking shape, a grand confrontation that would bring Kathy's deceit to light. It would be a painful spectacle, but I believed it would all be worth it. As days passed, our private investigator returned with more and more evidence, pictures of Kathy and Mark laughing at a coffee shop, walking arm in arm in the park, and dining at various restaurants. One evening, Tina and I were poring over the latest batch of photos when I saw something that made my heart leap. It was a picture of Kathy and Mark at the county fair. The same fair she had told me she was attending with her girlfriends. "Jerry," Tina's gentle voice pulled me out of my thoughts. "We have enough evidence. It's time we confronted them." She was right. It was time to confront Kathy and Mark, to expose their scandalous affair. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about getting closure and ensuring they faced the consequences of their deceit. We had devised a plan to invite Kathy and Mark to a dinner under the guise of discussing a potential business collaboration between Mark's company and the one I worked for. It was a risky move, but it provided the perfect setup for our confrontation. They would be trapped in their own web of lies. The day of the dinner arrived, and I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of anticipation mixed with dread. I was about to expose the woman I loved, to shatter the illusion of our perfect life together. The deceit, the pain, and the betrayal had led me to this moment. I was no longer the clueless husband. I was a man seeking justice. Kathy's scandalous affair had pushed me into the darkest corners of despair, but I had found my way out. I was ready to confront the storm, to face Kathy and Mark and expose their lies. As I walked into the upscale restaurant, the weight of my discovery felt both heavy and liberating. Kathy and Mark were already seated, and I joined them with a forced smile, hiding my turmoil under a facade of friendliness. Throughout the dinner, I watched them, observing their interactions. Seeing it all unfold before my eyes was a grim confirmation of what I had known for weeks. Finally, as the dessert was served, I decided it was time. "There's a reason I invited you both here tonight," I began, my voice steady, "and it is in business." Kathy looked puzzled, while Mark simply raised an eyebrow in curiosity. Taking a deep breath, I pushed an envelope across the table. It contained pictures of their secret rendezvous, undeniable proof of their lies. I believe this belongs to you," I said, locking eyes with Kathy. Mark stiffened next to her, his charming smile replaced by a look of surprise. Their secret was out in the open. Their scandalous affair laid bare before them to see. The moment of reckoning had arrived. I watched as Kathy looked at me, her eyes filled with guilt and shock. Mark, on the other hand, remained silent, his confident demeanor crumbling under the weight of his deceit. The silence that filled the room was deafening, filled with unspoken apologies, and undeniable truth. "I loved you, Kathy. I deserved better than this," I said. The confrontation was every bit as heartbreaking as I had imagined. The truth was out. The scandalous affair exposed. Kathy and Mark were no longer just characters in my tale of heartbreak. They were the villains who had broken the trust and love that once bound us together. Kathy's scandalous affair had shattered my world, but it had also given me the strength to rebuild it. After the confrontation, a heavy silence hung in the air. That night, I left Kathy at the restaurant, unable to bear the sight of her. The following days were a blow of lawyers, divorce papers, and endless explanations. I won't lie. It was painful, but I couldn't allow Kathy's betrayal to control my life any longer. Friends and family rallied around me, and Tina, my stalwart ally, was there every step of the way. Her friendship was a welcome traction amidst the turmoil. We had long conversations, discussed everything but Kathy and the scandalous affair. One afternoon, I received a call from Mark's wife, Samantha. The news of her husband's affair had reached her too, and she was devastated. However, she thanked me for uncovering the truth. Over the following week, I slowly began to put the pieces of my life back together. I focused on my work, my friendships, and above all, healing. I redecorated, changing things that reminded me of Kathy. It was a small step towards healing, a way of reclaiming my space. Shortly after that confrontation, Kathy moved out. I had already filed for divorce, and we were just waiting for her to be served in the upcoming court date. Kathy moved back in with her parents, who were wealthy and planned to help her find a place. At the divorce hearing, Kathy didn't even show up. She didn't get any alimony, and she left with nothing from the house. I was granted the divorce by default. As for Mark, my ex-wife's affair partner, his wife cleaned him out. She was a stay-at-home mom, and she got everything. The house, one of the cars, alimony, and child support. His wife called and told me that Mark was not fired, but received a reprimand, and my ex-wife was moved to another department. Kathy never tried to contact me after the divorce. As far as I'm concerned, she is dead to me. The painful chapter of my life had come to an end, and I was ready to move forward stronger and wiser. Dear listener, if you have reached this far, please consider subscribing our channel, as it helps and motivates us to continue our work.